Hey, what's up guys? Today we're going to talk about Mualani. Mualani is the newest Hydro 5-star coming in version 5.0 of Genshin Impact, and today we're doing something a bit different where I actually have the privilege of giving you guys some early access Mualani footage from the creator experience server, which obviously is subject to change, but I get to show off this new character, give you guys my honest and unfiltered thoughts about her, talk about how to play her and build her a bit, while obviously sparing some of the details for my more complete guide once the character is actually out. But for now, a review, a showcase, my honest thoughts, and some early footage of this character that I personally have been having a lot of fun with, and I'll show you guys why. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do today is talk a bit about Mualani, what she does, how she works, and then I'm going to give you guys my thoughts on her, go into more detail on things like her power level, teams, future synergies, and also include as much footage and like showcase material as I can so that you can see her in action. First of all, Mualani is a very unique character. I think a lot of Natlan characters, at least the ones we saw, seem to be designed with a unique mechanic, and Mualani is no exception. She rides around on a shark, and while exploring Natlan, you can kind of do this indefinitely through her exploration passive, but even just in general, in combat or wherever, Mualani will be just riding a shark through her elemental skill. Now, what her abilities actually do is not only can you ride around on the shark, but it will also deal a ton of damage when you do your shark bite attack. Effectively, Mualani will surf around on her shark, tagging enemies, and each time you tag an enemy, you will get a stack, gaining up to 3 stacks, after which you will deal significantly more damage and be able to dish out a heavy hit of hydro damage to the enemies you're fighting. Now, the exact way this stack works is you'll either get 1 stack per enemy you cross through, or you can get multiple stacks on the same enemy by going through them over and over. Once you have 3 stacks, that's when you should do a normal attack. Your shark will bite and it will deal a genuinely high scaling hit that you can easily vaporize as well for a big chunk of damage. On top of that, while the bite is single target, you'll get AoE as well. Any enemy you marked, provided you are fully stacked, will get hit with shark missiles as well, doing only a bit less damage. Now, something you want to know about this ability is that you will have a separate stamina bar representing your Night Soul's Blessing. Night Soul's Blessing is a unique mechanic to Natlan characters, having synergies with the Natlan artifact sets and just a lot of other pieces of equipment and character kits that are designed around Natlan. Now, what Mualani's Night Soul Blessing does is, as mentioned, give her this stamina bar that will allow her to surf on her shark, increasing her movement speed, interruption resistance, and you will be passively consuming it all the time when you're inside of your skill. If you dash around, you'll consume more, similar to Wanderer's skill and his stamina bar, and you will also get some Night Soul points back through pufferfishes that run to you. Overall though, all you need to know with your skill is that you surf around and then you bite enemies and you'll deal a big hit of hydro damage. Additionally, your burst is another big hydro nuke that you usually will be doing every other rotation. Now, typically inside of your skill, Mualani will get 3 or 4 shark bites, which are considered normal attack damage, and as I said, have a really high scaling. All of Mualani's damage, both her skill and her burst, will scale on her max HP, making it a relevant stat to prioritize. And Mualani is also a character who I'm sure you've noticed attacks relatively slowly because you have to swim around on your shark, get 3 stacks either by running through multiple enemies being easier in AoE or running through one enemy multiple times. There is a delay between your hits, and so you're not constantly dealing fast hits of hydro damage, but instead slower but bigger hits of damage. You sort of have a mini nuke on every single hit, which is important because it means that you can be efficient at vaporizing your damage. Mualani is very clearly designed to be a forward vape carry, someone who can be paired with an off-field pyro support and who can vaporize the majority of her damage because, as mentioned, she will attack slow enough to where you can reapply pyro between your hits and then vaporize all of your big nukes of damage. Now, with that said, how does Mualani fare and what are her strengths and weaknesses? Well, first, to start with the good, I think Mualani is a breath of fresh air. Genuinely, her kit is unlike anything we've seen, as she's very mobile, fun to pilot, you can just swim around everywhere. Yeah, it takes some time to get used to, but once you do, it's very rewarding, and she does have multiple big bursts of damage. In a somewhat similar way to Navia's E, all of her hits will deal a big chunk of damage that, in Mualani's case, you can also vaporize and start with a big amount of crit rate, helping to make her easier to build and more consistent to play. This is because she has a crit rate ascension and also gets up to 40% crit rate for free through the Natlan artifact set that she has amazing uptime on. Additionally, she is going to be the sort of standard forward vape DPS character, unlike any other we've seen. It's really been hard to make a forward vaping main DPS work because we either don't have good enough off-field pyro or just buffers for forward vape in general, or the existing hydro main DPSs will apply hydro too fast to be consistent forward vapors. There are some teams with like Farina forward vaping from off-field and other amazing hydro carries like even Nevelet, although he's not really forward vaping, he'll just get the occasional vaporize every now and then in his teams if paired with a pyro support. For those reasons, Mualani definitely explores this archetype in a different way than anyone else and can run many sort of off meta or slept on support characters that will apply enough pyro Hydro for her. In fact, typically you will need a ton of Pyro application to keep up with your Hydro character's Hydro, but because Mualani has slow and big hits of Hydro, you really don't need that much Pyro application at all, allowing her to run supports such as Dea or even Xinyan in some situations, on top of just your standard Xiangling or a Pyro-infused Kazuha. As far as just Mualani's damage is concerned though, I am definitely impressed with it, and I think she's a strong character for what she does, a selfish hyper carry that has really good personal damage. Now with that said, I do have some concerns I want to raise, and especially highlight the fact that I think she will get better as future Natlan characters come out. Now, not only has this been a thing in general, most characters at the start of a new region get better with future characters of said region, future artifact sets, and especially the Archon of said region, and I think Mualani, if anything, is more susceptible to this than almost anyone else has been. The reason for this is because, first of all, the Archon is Pyro, and personally I think the Archon will be a sort of generalistic Pyro character who can help someone like Mualani and will give you the sort of Pyro support that you're missing, but there's obviously no way of knowing. Additionally, something I almost forgot that is very crucial to mention here is that it's very clear that Natlan characters in particular are designed to have synergy with one another, especially when you look at the Night Soul mechanic and how it works with other aspects of the game like the new artifact sets. Namely, the Scroll of the Hero of Cinder City is a set that will give you up to 40% elemental damage bonus if the character equipping it is in the Night Soul's blessing state, giving this buff to any character of the elemental type related to the reaction they trigger. You can trigger this from off field, and the buff will last for 20 seconds, giving it a consistent uptime for someone like Mualani, and 40% elemental damage bonus is genuinely a lot. Because of this, if a Natlan support can run this artifact set, which they should very easily be able to, you can run them with Mualani and have not only whatever synergy their kits already have with one another, but also gain 40% elemental damage bonus on top of that. Now, as it stands right now, you can already run this set and get 12% elemental damage bonus if your character is not from Natlan, or 40% damage bonus with someone like Kachina, who just through the set can already be a viable support that you can use just for the buff. Now, while Kachina's kit has no inherent synergy with Mualani, and so I typically don't play them together, this set's buff already is something to keep in mind that you can use, because if your character has this Night Soul's Blessing, which it seems like all Natlan kits will, at least as of right now, then that's another big synergy that they'll have with each other, and in this case with Mualani, kind of proving my point that we're waiting for a new support for her, but even as of right now, she has solid teams where she performs and feels, in my opinion, very strong, but not game-breaking. Outside of just this, however, Mualani also has a part of her own kit that will give her more damage on her burst based on however many Night Soul bursts are triggered by a party member. Night Soul's bursts obviously are triggered by Natlan characters, giving her another way in which a Natlan character will synergize with her, on top of just the artifact set and on top of whatever other synergies said Natlan character has with Mualani. For these reasons, and the fact that a lot of existing characters have some synergy with Mualani, but not like the best synergy, or even with just forward vape as a whole, I believe that it is highly likely that she will continue to get better and get more support characters that work with her and that help increase her damage and her team's overall strength. Now, as far as Mualani's existing synergies go, here's what you need to know. Well, I want to reassure you by saying that Mualani does have solid teams and does perform as a strong DPS, even though she runs into problems with a lot of different support characters. First of all, as an HP scaler, she naturally can't benefit from attack buffs from someone like Bennett. Additionally, she does require a decent amount of setup time, having to swim through enemies before hitting them and then re-swimming through them before every attack, gaining stacks before you can sort of shark bite your enemies, making it to where buffs with a very short uptime at the start of your rotation, like for example Verdescent Venerer, may run out before you get to make the most use out of it. With that said, Anemo supports can still work well with her, but it's something to keep in mind. And as far as Pyro characters go, while Mualani doesn't need the most Pyro application because she has slow hits of Hydro damage, slow but big hits, the go-to Pyro support for basically any reaction has always been Xiangling. Now, with Mualani, however, Xiangling ends up being a bit inconsistent in the sense that you don't generate a lot of energy and you don't have a Pyro battery in the form of Bennett for your Xiangling. Because of this, a solo Pyro Xiangling will oftentimes need to run an ungodly amount of energy recharge, like upwards of 250%, to be able to get her Pyro NATO back on cooldown all the time. I will say though, a big upside of Xiangling is that her Pyro application is fast enough to where you can also run someone like Farina in your team who will have good personal damage and buffs, provided you can stack her fanfare enough with a healer. Keep in mind that the Pyro application can still be a bit inconsistent here. Just make sure you start with Pyro and aren't messing up your auras so you can still trigger Vaporize on your Mualani whenever possible. Because of this, while Xiangling definitely still works and is still a great unit, a lot of the times you may choose to run another Pyro character like Dea, who can work surprisingly well with Mualani. While Dea isn't the best unit, Dea will give you a decent amount of Pyro application enough for Mualani. You can also run a Sack Greatsword if you want to. Other pyro options can work as well. Think of someone like Tomar Shinyan if it's enough for you. And you can also run Burning with a Dendro character that can either give you a lot of buffs or a lot of damage to make enemies constantly burning and then vaporize all of your Mualani hits. Generally though, Mualani is a selfish hyper carry who has solid damage, and so any character that can give her buffs will work. You want to try to vaporize, and then you're going to be running buffing characters like even someone like Candace or Mona if she doesn't give you too much hydro, Yelan, Zhong Li for his shield and res shred, and an emo support. Really just very flexible slots alongside a pyro character and either burning or just enough pyro to make sure you're vaporizing as much as you can. Personally, I've liked running Nahida for a ton of EM, but she's really not needed, and even free-to-play friendly teams, 4-star supports such as Candace, Sucrose, Shangling with enough ER, or other pyro options can all work alongside Mualani. I'll go into a more deep dive, dive, on Mualani's teams in my complete guide once I've had more time to test literally everything, but for now, understand that she's a vaporize-focused carry who should be ran alongside a pyro support, and you don't need the most pyro application, and as far as existing supports go, there can definitely be some issues like Shangling needing an ungodly amount of ER, or other pyro units either not having the most uptime or not the most pyro application. I would like to highlight though that a lot of sort of underrated and slept on characters, support characters such as even Candace and Dea, can be used with Mualani in a actually surprisingly solid team given what they provide to her, which I think is a really nice thing for Mualani and for people who want to run some underappreciated supports. Overall though, I have a positive opinion of Mualani's kit from a meta or strength perspective. I don't think she's game breaking. I think she's well balanced, very strong, and there is some room for skill expression, at least as far as getting used to how she works, how you can swim through enemies, time your attacks, and get the most out of her kit. I think she's someone who also gets better in AoE. Instead of constantly having to swim through one enemy, you can swim through multiple enemies, stack it up faster, get maybe 4 hits instead of 3, and also in AoE, you'll hit every enemy that you mark at once, giving you way more damage while still being solid in single target. Mualani offers you a forward vape playstyle and one that differs from someone like Nevalette, who I think is the most broken DPS in the game. It's pretty widely accepted, so obviously if you have him, you don't need to pull for another DPS, but even as 2 hydro HP scaling catalyst characters, they play nothing alike and will run completely different teams with like one exception. Mualani's reliant on forward vape and will probably only get better as future Natlan characters are released. With that in mind, she's a selfish hyper carry who is very fun and rewarding, but is still just a main DPS, so if you already have other options or don't particularly like her, then please don't feel forced to get her, in my personal opinion, but more on that post-release. Another point I wanted to mention before moving on is also that Mualani does have big stepping stones, definitely gets better with her first constellation and also her signature weapon, both of which are relatively similar increases in damage and pretty big ones that can make her feel even stronger. Now obviously she's great even at C0, which is something I'll showcase now and in my next video, but it's worth mentioning that she does have upgrade potential, room for vertical investment if that's something you want, but once again, it's not something she needs, so don't feel forced. Now to show you a bit of my Mualani, here's the build I'm running right now. First of all, my talents are 199 since I'm not using my normals or anything, and I am running her on the new Obsidian Codex set, which is undoubtedly her best in slot. Stat-wise, I'm running her on HP Hydro Crit, and more on this decision and what you could be running once again in the guide video coming next. Now for her weapon though, and just her build in general, I will say that you should prepare to farm for new things. This new set is great for her, and for her weapons, while yes, her signature will be the best, if you don't get it, there's genuinely a solid and really good free-to-play option with the new Natlan Craftable, which is the ring that you can get through, I also believe, the web event that they're launching, and then you can craft it with the Natlan mats, which may take some time to get, I understand that, but it's a weapon that gives you HP and a ton of normal attack damage, making it really good for Mualani, as her skill hits do count as normal attack damage, making her have pretty solid weapon options, on top of also being able to run the Sacrificial Jade Battle Pass option and others that I'll cover in my guide. Now with that in mind, as far as my build goes, keep in mind that a lot of these stats are inflated through her crit ascension. Also, I get 40% bonus crit rate from my Obsidian Codex set, and I'm also running this 88 crit damage weapon. Now obviously it's R1 and she's C0, but still it's a lot of stats, and so I have a solid ratio of effectively 100 crit rate with 279 crit damage, no ER, a little bit of EM, and I do get more through buffing characters like Nahida and Sucrose, and a solid amount of HP, although this is in a double Hydro team, whereas without it, I would only have around 33.8k. With that in mind, I'm gonna have some background footage playing now of my Mualani clearing kind of whatever I can, showing her off in various content. Now, obviously, I'll include a full Abyss 12 showcase in my complete guide coming out next, but for now, you can see that not only does she have solid burst damage just from vaping and building her properly, consistent big hits of damage, but will also have good AoE and is relatively straightforward to play, although you do have to get the hang of her. With that in mind, point, understand that she is a hyper carry. She will be dealing almost all of your team's damage, unless you're running something like a Mualani, Farina, Shangling team, although even in that team, she will be carrying. Overall though, I have been pleasantly surprised with this character. Again, I find her fun, and I find her considerably strong, like a genuinely good option, a solid main DPS and one that I like, but again, understand that one, she's not needed and not game breaking, and two, that I also think she'll get better as future Natlan characters come out that may or may not synergize with her, so we'll have to wait and see how the region pans out and her synergy or lack thereof with the future Pyro Archon. And so yeah, those are my overall thoughts on Mualani. Now, this is the first time I do a sort of early video on a Genshin character, first time I can. I hope you enjoy this type of content. Obviously, I'll stick to my regular guides as well, but this is a nice bonus way of providing you guys with early content. I'm grateful that I have access to this creator experience server. Keep in mind that nothing is final, but I'm glad I got to give you guys my thoughts on this character, whom I, as I said, have been enjoying. If there's anything I want to add, I will include it in my next video, my more detailed guide. I still have some team stuff to test around and some maybe more advanced combos, rotation stuff, build info, and everything like that. So stay tuned for the follow-up video. And for now, I hope you enjoyed the guide and I hope you're excited for the future content. Thanks for watching. And as always, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.